We're going to go ahead and get started with our panel. It's our last session this morning as we wrap up our 5th Kemin Intestinal Health Symposium. We have a very nice panel of specialists to talk about sustainability. As you all know, sustainability has been something that's been top of mind in the last few years in the industry. Lots of talk about it, how to do better with sustainability, and lots of different opinions, lots of different definitions, and we're going to have some discussions about from the group here as far as what they think about sustainability and some of the things that are progressing, some of the things that are going well, some of the things we need to be doing better. So we have we're going to go around with the introductions to get started, and during the process, during the conversation, you can send us questions. Either from here, you can use the QR code to submit questions like we've been doing, or if you are joining us online, you can submit questions like you've been doing for the last couple of days. With that, why don't we get started with a quick introduction from each one of you, and then please tell us a little bit about yourself. I know, Jen, I talked a little bit about you, but you can just tell us a little bit more, just a brief summary about yourself and what you think is the definition of sustainability in your opinion.
Awesome. Yeah, so thanks again, Jen Walker, Director of Quality and Care for Danone. Veterinarian by trade, cow champion by passion, and so I think from a sustainability perspective, in just thinking about the conversation over the last couple of days, just to boil it down, I think it is, by and large, taking the long view and putting all those puzzle pieces together, and I don't think we've grasped that or wrapped our head around that a little bit, because we're still very short-sighted, and I don't think short-sightedness and sustainability go hand in hand. So I think, to me, that's like the piece of the puzzle that's critical to acknowledge.
Thanks, Jen. Tom?
I'm Tom McDonald. I'm Senior Vice President of Environmental Affairs for Five Rivers Cattle Feeding. I've been with Five Rivers for 28 years. I started out before that with Texas Cattle Feeders Association, and I was there when the environmental issues really got hot for CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, and I worked through regulations with the Texas Regulatory Agency, EPA, and worked through the regulations, worked with the feed yards to get into compliance, and then I came to work for, it was at that time, Continental Grain Company's cattle feeding division, which is now Five Rivers Cattle Feeding, and took over environmental management of our facilities there, and then that has more or less transformed into sustainability, and so as I think about sustainability, we always refer to the 3 pillars. You've got environmental excellence, social responsibility, and economic prosperity. And all of those things, when you think about it, just add up to good business. It's about efficiency. It's about doing the right thing. It really makes sense. Now, I'm glad you asked us to define sustainability, because I think that's one of the things that's been a challenge is, everybody has their own definition. So I think coming at it with a common definition is very important.
Thanks, Tom. Tanika?
Hi, I'm Tanika O'Connor-Denny. I am an animal nutritionist. I've worked not only with the government, but private sector, and now I'm the Managing Director of Farm and Animal Nutrition Solutions Limited based in Jamaica. I find it quite interesting, the whole question of sustainability. The definition really boils down to who you're talking to. Sustainability for a multinational company is totally different from the small farmer who is struggling to buy books, put clothes on her kids' backs, and to have a livable wage. And we have to be very cognizant of that. I think a lot of the discussions that I hear surrounding sustainability is from a what you call a global north perspective, well, what about the global south perspective of sustainability? It's all well and good when you want to implement policy changes from a perspective of a country that has already gone through the different revolution, the agricultural, industrial, and now you're into the information revolution. Well, what about the countries that have not completely undergone their agricultural revolution? Is it morally or ethically responsible for us to impose what we think sustainability is on those countries when there is a real need for increased accessibility to not just food but animal-based foods, and you have the risk of malnutrition all around us, So I think, as Tom said, it's three pillars. It's social, economic, and environmental. And yes, we want to ensure that we have the long view, but there's also the real social responsibility for the short view, because we want to ensure that a country develops the here and now, especially when you think about the importance of animal-based protein the first 5 years of a child's life. You want to make the food reasonably priced so that these young future leaders of the world can thrive and survive. So you have to take a short and a long-term view and not be myopic when we're talking about ensuring that the resources that we have today are available for future generations.
Thank you. Great answer. Do we have any questions here from the audience in the group? I can't see if we have anything online here. I don't have access to the list here in front of me. So, but I'll follow up with another question here until we can see the questions that are available online. So, Jen, in your opinion, what are the major challenges that you see around sustainability today, and where are we making more progress?
I think one of them, I think, is in the measuring, actually, and the reporting, because there's been a lot of commitments, and I'm not sure how well informed. Like, I question the data that went behind that commitment. Like, that seems like a lofty goal. Can we do that? And I'm not sure we have and not that we won't come up with great ideas to do things, but I think sometimes the biggest challenge is we've kind of put the cart before the horse. We've made, I think to your point, Tanika, we made some big commitments, not thinking about like all of the things that come from that, right? And because we do need to think about the people, the boots on the ground of the people, and not just the folks, doing their bonuses at the end of the year and that. And so I think that's in my mind the biggest challenge, is that I think there's a lot of folks who have gotten way a bit over their skis, and maybe that'll make us just try harder. I guess, and figure it out. But I do think where we have made progress is in just rethinking sustainability, that it isn't just about sustaining, it's regenerative, right? So more thinking around regenerative agriculture and what that means, and understanding the health of the soil and kind of moving forward. And so I think I've really enjoyed seeing that sort of area grow, and understanding how it's all tied in with welfare and inextricably linked, right? So we all have to work on it together, but going back to the fact that it's a compromise, because it's the health of the people and the folks doing the work, and in all these areas of the world where if we're just focusing on one thing, it's not going to work. And I think we're starting to see that more. I think, at least from the boots on the ground people that I see working on it, that they really appreciate that it's really we need to think about it more holistically.
Thank you. What about you, Tom? In the beef cattle area, where do you think there are more challenges and more progress you've seen so far?
Well, speaking specifically of beef cattle production, I think there's been a lot of progress made in getting producers comfortable with the idea of sustainability. You have to remember there are 750 to 800,000 beef cattle producers in the United States, and getting them comfortable with the fact that this isn't just an unfunded mandate that's going to come down from a company on high and say you're going to have to do these things, increase your production costs, and by the way, we're not going to pay you anymore at the end of the day. To this is continuous improvement. It's sustainability, as Jen said with animal welfare. It's a journey. It's not a destination. And so it's just continuous improvement. I think, Tanika, that's one thing that I would say, even to underdeveloped countries, we can all make progress. We can all look for ways to do things better. So I think we've done a good job. We've stood up the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. I believe that is a viable organization today. And I'll have to tell you, the first time that I sat down at a table with producers, with fast food chains, with NGOs, I was skeptical, I was nervous. We had never been in the same room together. And now then, I think we're working in a healthy environment together, so that's progress. I think part of our challenge, though, is just more of the same thing. This is a complicated issue, especially when you get into the climate component of it. You know, we've got carbon neutral, we've got carbon net zero, climate neutral, insetting, outsetting. It's stuff that I'm in this every day and I don't understand it. How do we expect to explain that to a consumer, or have you know, the general public understand that, and think about the 750 to 800,000 producers that have to have a grasp of those things too. So there's a big education component. I think the other thing, the challenge that we probably even haven't felt yet, is what Jen referred to, and that's the commitments that's been made to by the larger food companies. And a lot of the commitments are going to require not only them making improvements within their own shop, but they're going to be looking to what we call scope 3, or their suppliers, to make improvements. And so I feel like there's yet to be a pressure on producers from the larger companies when we get closer to their commitment dates. There's going to be pressure for producers to make improvements that will go to help their customers reach their commitments.
What about you, Tanika? What do you think?
One thing that I find interesting is that a lot of the sustainability talk that I've seen over the 20 plus years that I've been involved in animal production is, you know, we're circling back to where some countries still are. So, for example, free range, well, backyard poultry is still very much a large part of the Caribbean and the African experience, and it's interesting that the global north is moving back towards it. Same thing for beef cattle production, dairy cattle, access to pastures, that type of thing. So I think that is one thing that we're getting right. You know, it's the understanding that there is a balance to be had between increased efficiency and the animal's need for comfort and how it plays into sustainability. Another thing where I see we're going in the right direction is the use of appropriate technology depending on where you are in your stage of development. And the whole concept of the farmer field school methodology, where rather than the technocrats telling the farmers this is how you should improve efficiency, improve sustainability, improve productivity, the farmers themselves are teaching each other how we can move towards feeding the whole world or reducing waste, as you mentioned. So I think that's where we're going in the right direction. I think where we're going in the wrong direction is some interest groups, I call them the 1%ers, not related to the 1% economic people, but the 1%ers in terms of advocacy, who are very loud. They think that their way of thinking about sustainability is a correct way. It's informed by their life experiences, and they're so vocal that they're affecting policy, and the policy of these very affluent people are now affecting the rest of us in the world that just want clean, safe food to ensure that we're developing properly. So, they're forgetting the human component of sustainability. So that's where I think we're going wrong. So as production people, we now need to become more vocal. We need to become passionate and say, I too care about sustainability. I entered into this profession because I truly believe that I can make a difference. And this is how I'm making a difference. And then once we educate the public and they see our passion and our love, then I think we can move the narrative to a more sustainable or equitable production system.
Great point. Thank you. Do we have any, Nathan?
So it feels like, you guys talked about the 3 pillars of sustainability. It seems like within the U.S. here, we're very, very focused within the environmental side of it. So where do you guys see we can spend more time on the social side as well as the economic side to kind of bring those 3 pillars together? Because that's what it seems like. I was just having a conversation with somebody where we have farmers now that use sustainability when they actually mean efficiency. So we're using those terms interchangeably, but they're different terms. So how do we pull all that together in a better, a better package or a better way?
Well, I'll answer that first. Well, one of the things that I noticed, even with the presentations yesterday, is the groups that are sampled for surveys. It's disproportionately towards middle, upper income brackets. And as a result, we tend to think that, that's what our consumers really want. But in reality, what they want, in my opinion, especially if you look at other countries, is they want to know that you're doing the best that you can with all of the resources and information that you have. So just like how Maya Angelou said, if you can do better. And then once you're given more information, then yes, you improve upon it. And I think that's the reason why they're mixing up efficiency with sustainability, because they're 2 different things. So, for example, when you move towards antibiotic-free production, and it means 2 different things in Europe versus the United States, I personally think that the European version of antibiotic-free is a little bit better because they've not excluded the use of ionophores. And the reason why I think it's a little bit better is you don't really see the drop in feed efficiency that you find when you've totally removed ionophores. And when you have now, if you use the American model of antibiotic-free, now you're using more feed. That's more corn, more soya, canola, whatever it is. Increased deforestation just to get the animals to the same weight that they had 5-10 years ago. So, you might argue from a sustainable standpoint, yes, you're saving the drugs that are still effective for future use, but in reality, you're affecting the environment negatively. So is that really sustainable? No. So it just depends on, so it just means that you need to increase the sample size so that you get a more balanced perspective.
Anyone else would like to?
I would just say, I think they're all three there. It may not be as apparent. So environmental, yeah, that's a big deal. We focused on that for several years now. But social is taking care of our people, the employees that work for our company. It's being a good neighbor in these small rural communities where we have we're given the right to operate. You know, it's sponsoring the Little League, the Booster Club, all the 4-H and FFA things that we help with. And it's also the bigger programs, like Five Rivers started beef sticks for backpacks in Colorado. So this is a nutrition program for children on the weekends that are food insecure. You know, we, along with a lot of partners, we helped start this, but we provided over 1 million beef sticks to kids in Colorado for the weekend. So that's a part of the social component. I put into social animal welfare as well, because taking care of the animals responsibly that's just part of it. And so I think it comes back to how do you define it. And yeah, maybe we're not making as big a splash as we should, but we are doing a lot of things from a social standpoint. And then economic, everything has to have an economic component to it. I mean, I've said we should never apologize for making a profit, because if we don't make a profit, we can't do the other things as well. And so we have to be profitable. We have to take care of our people, our communities, and we've got to take care of the environment as well.
Yeah, and I think maybe just to add to that, what you touched on, Tika, was part of that is making sure we have the right people at the table, right? So informed folks who can speak to these things, you know, whether it's animal welfare, you know, people should have an understanding of animal production systems and animal health and welfare. And I would argue that in a lot of these situations, there's folks at the table making decisions who really don't have a wee bit of knowledge around animal health or welfare or the production systems and what you can do. And I'm just as guilty in some, you know, I love working with farmers where we can talk to them about, you know, understanding all the other competing things that they have to manage, and to say, you know, I had a nice conversation with a farmer a few weeks ago talking about, like, well, what would it take to, like, get your cows outside? Let's just imagine, right? And then we had all the discussions about the environmental rules. Like, so I'd love to do that, but then first I have to do this, and, you know, this state's a little different, and his municipality, and all of the complicating things, right? And when I think about your average farmer, and all the things they have to be an expert at, it kind of is mind-blowing to me, like all the things they need to know. Like, I know cows, I know animal welfare, and I know animal health. I don't know anything about growing corn or, you know, water. So I think understanding and getting the right folks at the table, because I do think a lot of these things we tend to, with the best of intentions, make some of these decisions in a vacuum, and then that doesn't serve anybody well. And you can't optimize that or get to that when you're just, you know, kind of narrowly focused on the one thing and don't understand all the other things they have to also manage at the same time. So,
No, great comments there. We do have a list of questions here that are coming through. Please keep sending questions. How do you view the connection between sustainability, productivity, I think we covered some of that, gut health and welfare? And does a focus on gut health reduce the usage of antibiotics and overall create a healthier herd flock that needs fewer interventions? Anyone wants to take that one?
Well, I'll address it just purely from a productivity standpoint. Again, as the healthier the animal, the more comfortable the animal, the more productive the animal is going to be. And if we can get an animal to finished weight in less days with less feed, less water, less land use, that's a win for sustainability. So yes, absolutely, in my mind, gut health, a healthier animal, reduced antibiotics. We don't feed antibiotics because we like buying antibiotics. We're trying to keep the animals healthy.
Yeah.
And so that's the goal. If we can keep those animals healthier, low stress, comfortable, then that's a more productive animal, which is good for the animal and it's good for the business.
Yeah, I agree with you. One of the things that removing antibiotics certainly taught us is the importance of proper management, getting it right from the get-go. Antibiotics were definitely covering up a lot of inefficiencies in our system, and it really forced us to look at that, whether it is heat stress, feed management, conditions, water quality, and just the use of additives that we never really thought of, capsicum, the phytobiotics, understanding the interrelationship between nutrition and physiology and microbiology. It certainly opened up our eyes. So all of a sudden, instead of the nutritionists acting in a vacuum, well, now you had to collaborate with the producer, with the veterinarians, and understand the importance of each of our roles in the overall system. So, even learning from dairy nutritionists, the dairy nutritionists for years already knew that once you fed the microbes in the rumen, then you're feeding the animal. Well, as poultry nutritionists and swine nutritionists, we had to learn that aspect of animal nutrition. So I definitely think that the removal of antibiotics, the focus on gut health has made us much better, and it has actually improved profitability for some companies that have gotten it right from a management perspective.
Thanks, Tanika. Do you have any comments, John?
Well, no, I think we're just beginning to learn and I think we have good evidence in at least dairy cattle, the impact of heat stress, even on the fetus, right? And how that impacts the cow, into her later lactations. And I think understanding gut health of the calf when it's born, our management of that, just the information that was shared yesterday around the feeding of milk to the pigs. And when I think about how we manage dairy calves and whether we're not feeding transition milk, what are some opportunities? So I think it's key. I think I'm excited about where it's going to go in the next few years and as we learn more. But I think as we start to unpack all these other things, we will start removing some crutches like we have in some antibiotics and then create other efficiencies that will make us, again, add to the sustainability across things. So I think it's going to be key. Not sure exactly what it looks like yet, but.
Do we have any other questions here from the group? Let me go to our list here of questions that are coming in. How does the concept of precision nutrition tie to sustainability at an operation? Any comments?
Yeah, that's the backbone of any operation. I know that through the use of NIR technology and just understanding the minute needs of the animal, it's important from a sustainability standpoint, because now in the past when you tried to feed a low protein diet, just wasn't working, and that's because we didn't understand the nutrient composition of the various ingredients that were being fed and the antagonism between the different amino acids. But now that we have access to more crystalline amino acids, we have access to the organic acids that not just retard bacterial growth, but upregulate and downregulate some gene expression within the gastrointestinal tract. We find that we're able to do much more from a weight gain perspective when you're formulating with much less ingredients. So, and the knock-on effect of less nutrients being excreted, and then, less going into our waterways. That is one of the things that, is very good about looking at things from a precision nutrition standpoint, And I guess the next move for us for poultry nutritionists is to follow the footsteps of swine nutritionists when it comes to using net energy for formulations. But yeah, I definitely think that precision nutrition does help with sustainability.
Thanks, Tanika. Any questions from the group here? Do you think that producers and nutritionists want life cycle assessment values when looking at feed additives? Will we ever look at least impact diet formulation versus a least cost? Anyone wants to take that one?
Well, I guess in my mind, again, I think that idea about really taking a long view, right? So I think, we're all guilty of it, of making some change and doing something, thinking we're saving money, and then you realize it's costing you in the long run. So it's that short-term, long-term. So I think, that would be great, because I do think there's oftentimes that we make some adjustments on the farms nutritionally and other places that we thought was going to save us money, and in the long term. And I think the key is, how do we measure that? And that's what, it's so hard. It's such a complex system, right? So you change something, how do you measure all the things? And so I think there's probably lots of benefits that we just we can't measure. So we can't put a number on it, which is very frustrating, because people say, like, what's the benefit of improved welfare or other things? And a lot of times that benefit is so far down the road, I can't specifically quantify it perfectly. So things like that would help, because, again, to your point, they're all in the business. You have to be profitable. None of this works if we're not profitable. Now, how much profit? That's the question, right? So, but you have to be profitable. So if we're not going to be profitable, and it's a failure, we failed before we begun. So I think keeping that in mind is, so any way we can do things like that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think this is a crystal ball question, and that is, what will the world look like in 5-10 years? Will you actually be getting paid for reducing your carbon output? But even bigger than that, I'd love to be able to measure it. I would love to know what a technology does in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. Today we're working off of 10-year-old models, and that scares me to death, because the only way we're going to get better is to get smaller. And so, we have got to get better at measuring these life cycle assessments. We've got to get better. We've got to get to where we can measure greenhouse gas emissions and be able to predict more accurately with more specificity based on the genetics and the diet and the environment and all the things that we know impact a life cycle assessment. So I guess I'm saying probably someday this will be a component, just like least cost formulation. At some point, we will figure in what is the life cycle component to a diet, and how do these things impact it.
Yeah, you already have some companies that do let you know the impact of using their additives. Again, it depends on who you're formulating for. When I'm formulating for a large integrator that has a social responsibility to the community, and they like to report on it, then yes, I will not be using a least cost formulation. I will be, talking about the life cycle impact. But when you're looking at the single mother that's buying 50 baby chicks for her backyard, and she staggers her production every 2 weeks to buy another 50 set of chicks, and in the one area you have all of them, and she's buying one bag of feed because that's what can hold in the back of the taxi. I don't really think that's appropriate as yet. I don't think we're there, maybe 10, 15 years down the line, because she's worried about whether or not she can buy the cold medicine for her child, whether or not she can buy another bag of feed for her 50 chicks. So it's complex. It's a nice to have, but we're not all there as yet, and we need to accept that.
Thank you. We do have a couple questions here. Ryan?
So I think some of the producers hear sustainability and they think a hammer to beat animal agriculture over the head with, that they get defensive about sustainability because how it's been used. And I think one of the reasons is, and I would like all your opinions on this, we don't defend conventional agriculture in terms of sustainability. For example, a feedlot is a more sustainable way to finish an animal than grass-fed on pasture. But we don't talk about that. Or organic production of poultry is not very sustainable when your feed input has to be inefficiently produced because it can't be GMO. And then you can't treat your animals, and a sick animal or a dead animal is food waste. But we don't talk in these terms. We grant the people all of the arguments and then try to fight on their battlefield instead of arguing, actually, conventional agriculture is quite sustainable in many of its practices. There's also now this talk of circular economy in agriculture, which is something producers have done forever, but because you put a fancy word on it, it becomes new and hip, but crop producers and animal producers have been doing that forever. So what about the defense on sustainability front of conventional production?
Well, I will defend conventional production all day long. I do believe it is the most sustainable. Now, at the same time, I'm not going to disparage another production type. I think we can all get better at doing what we're doing. It's that journey of continuous improvement. We can have more sustainable beef, milk, chicken in any kind of production system. But when you look at what uses the least resources, I mean, we've for 50 years now, we've been using technology and developing technology and making improvements, whether that's steam flake corn, whether it's improved genetics, whether it's ionophores or beta agonist or whatever. We're getting animals to a finished point. Our greenhouse gas intensity continues to go down because we're producing more beef with fewer cows, with fewer animals. And so our intensity continues to go down. And why is that? It's because of technology and improvements that we've made along the way. And to say we're going to throw all of that out and be equally as productive just doesn't make any sense. So I will defend the conventional production models, but at the same time, I would appreciate the other production models, not disparaging what I'm doing. I'm not going to disparage what they're doing. There's niche markets for everybody, and if you're willing to pay for the organic model, then great. But please don't disparage my production model.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think, again, there's room in the market for everybody, right? Everybody will find their spot. I think, to your point, we do have to. I do believe that folks should be able to feed their families, and particularly from a welfare perspective, which is my focus. You shouldn't have to think about it when you go to the grocery store. I don't want people to have to pick a product based on welfare. I just want them to feel good about knowing that we try our best. And we're going to try our best, and we're going to fail. and have those honest conversations about the systems we have today. They're not perfect, but they certainly weren't designed by anybody who meant to not be nice. And so there was a million decisions that were made behind everything we do and how we raise animals today. And sometimes maybe we've focused a little bit too much on one thing, and maybe we need to course correct, and that's fine. And we'll imagine, the one thing I love about working with farmers is that they can fix anything. So I know that we can find a better way to do conventional systems that will be more efficient and more welfare friendly and everything else. I don't know what it looks like, but I think it's maybe a good thing for us to remember that if folks feel like we're not able to defend, or that we haven't been defending conventional agriculture, or what I'll just call modern or today's agriculture, we need to do better at that, because I think also appreciating that in accepting that we can do better does not imply that we've been doing wrong. And I think we need to remind folks of that there's not an admission of guilt or failure in that. To say that I can do better is just that. But I think it's a natural position for all of us in having, anybody who's had feedback from work. You can do better, but it doesn't mean that you're failing. But it's really hard to get your head in that mindset of okay, yeah, we can try better. It doesn't mean that we're an abject failure. It's amazing what we do. I mean, I'm amazed every day at what we accomplish in agriculture with the resources we have, and then in other countries, what they do. And so, yeah, I think part of it's just making sure we deliver that message in the right way.
We had another question back there.
When we talk about sustainability, one of the pillars is environmental, but we usually understand as just the environment, but we also are not taking into account energy, water, and I don't know, any other, even nutrient balance that it's part of the environmental. So if we just were to be able to measure energy, but the real energy that we understand as how much energy do we need to grow the crops, or how much energy do we need to really transport the feed, then we can probably, it's just an idea, or how to really measure how much energy and how efficient, related to the question, the initial question we have. We think in efficiency as efficiency of the animal, but if we are talking about sustainability, we should somehow find a way to measure all the energy that it takes us to produce. And talking about the crops, the transportation, the everything that happens across all the way to produce a beef or steak. So what are your opinions on how can we really start interacting with other industries, like, for instance, transportation, and how is that impacting our production systems?
Yeah, it might be presumptive, but I do think, again, that collaboration we talked about, I feel like the sustainable beef folks, the group that you mentioned, I mean, and I know the roundtable, U.S. roundtable, they are collaborating across all these groups, and I think dairy is doing the same to try to understand how we're connected and be able to measure everything to really get to this complete life cycle assessment, truly to get that. And I think that's exactly what it's going to take, is collaboration across those industries to put all the pieces together to understand what is the real impact of that, and because everything is going to impact the next thing. So whether it's on transportation and fuel costs, and what is the impact of having to raise more corn, or this that uses more, whatever. There's always something that we need to measure to look at that. So I think it is happening. To your point, I'm just not sure we're good at measuring yet, getting it all. It's a lot to put together, but my impression is you guys are working on it, at least on the beef side, and I know we are on the dairy side.
Yeah, that is, energy is included in the beef life cycle assessment that was done by the beef checkoff. And energy was a very small component, even though, you know, you think about all the transportation of a beef animal, it was still a pretty small component, and a large percentage of it was where you have irrigation to grow corn. The irrigation requires energy to get the water pumped. So energy is a component of the beef life cycle assessment. It is today. Now, it probably could be better, but that is included.
Yeah, your point is actually spot on. You know, I go back to even antibiotic-free production, you know, replacing antibiotic, which is actually a good step for us, by the way. I'm a firm believer in that. But just replacing that one antibiotic meant using anywhere up to 5 additional additives. So that's 5 products that need fossil fuel, that need increased water, more transportation. What's the real environmental impact of that? I would love to see somebody look into that. So yes, from a sustainability standpoint, we have antibiotics to use for future generation, but it would be great to quantify what those additional additives had added to the whole sustainability argument. And if you don't quantify something, then you cannot improve upon it. So I do take your point. It's something that we need to look at. Also, we need to look at it from a lens that is not United States or Europe. Let's look at it from the Caribbean, Latin America, Africa, Asia. Because let's face it, when you look at meat consumption and production, Europe and United States are on the decline. The rest of the global south were on the increase. And come 2050, 2060, we're going to be the major consumers of meat. So you have to involve us in this discussion and not taint it or skew the conversation more towards the more affluent countries.
I would make one more comment about energy, and that is enteric methane emissions, and that is energy that's being wasted, and being able to utilize the methane that's produced in the rumen is of critical importance. And I know there's 100 researchers, maybe more than that, working to try to get at that. And I know that it'll never be zero or we'll kill the cow, but improving on that, getting more efficient with enteric methane, I think is a big key to increasing our sustainability as well as making our businesses more profitable.
Any other questions here from the group? One more question here from the that was submitted online. Will technology help us move sustainability forward? For example, blockchain for tracing and transparency, sensors and cameras for animal and feed intake tracking, etc. What other tech do you see in the horizon?
You know, I laugh when I see, well, not necessarily blockchain, but simple, appropriate technology. There's a farmer, I go and visit him, and he has Ring cameras set up throughout his barn. He knows exactly when the birds are getting up to eat. He has a simple 360 camera that is in his control room. So not only is he getting the sensor readings from his computer, but he can look and see if there's an error message. Did somebody forget to turn on a switch or something? So I would say it's not just technology to improve, but appropriate technology, because you don't always have to spend a lot of money on technology. Just a simple $10 camera can really help us when we're looking at bird comfort, sow comfort, cow comfort. Yeah, so I definitely think technology has a role to play.
Thanks, Tanika.
Yeah, I think technology is how we improve. Blockchain and just being able to be transparent about what has happened to that animal along its way is, I don't know that makes us more sustainable. It reports, it's more like the audit than it is actually improving sustainability. But absolutely, I believe sustainability is all about technology, and it doesn't have to be electronics either. It can be our management processes. It can be, like I said, steam flake corn improves the digestibility of corn 15%. That's a technology, and it's a huge component of sustainability when you're talking about a beef cattle feedlot. So yes, technology is going to play a role. I believe there's a role in being able to be transparent with our production systems, and that's where blockchain and those kind of things come in. I think we've got a long ways to go to get that perfected, but I do think it'll play a role.
Yeah, I think in all that, because I mean, the like you said, the blockchain, that's feedback, right? So we can keep track. Like, we don't want to implement something and then be on the wrong track. And then to your point, it's a great point, Tika, as it has to be appropriate to the person using it, and it doesn't have to be fancy. Like, there's some farmers that we work with, that are Amish producers that aren't going to have that like fancy technology, but some of the improvements we can make are just helping them do what they can do more efficiently, right? So that they have more time to do other stuff, because they might need a second income or to get there. And then when you get to the really high-tech technology, I do think one of the things we need to consider is the usability of it and what to do with the data. I feel like there's lots of systems out there, and we haven't figured out what to do with the data. So we have a lot of it, and I think the next step is to then transform that data into usable information at a farm level that can help them make decisions. And I think that's probably something we haven't given enough attention to. We've given a lot of attention to new fancy technology, but I find that it's not actionable data on the farm. And so I think we need to work on that. But I think there's lots of other simple things we can do that help the farmers be more efficient, and in many ways that help the animals that are more sustainable. That's not necessarily what I think folks think of as technology per se.
Yeah. And, as you talk about, just to add on top of that, there's some cultural knowledge that we need to utilize also. So the use of plant extracts, for example, folk medicine. I know that in the past we've often discounted it from a Western standpoint, but we're circling back to it. And then now, through the use of technology, we're able to concentrate these plant extracts for improved efficiency. So that's the reason why I said, appropriate technology too, because we can't discount the cultural knowledge that a lot of the small farmers have already. So just to use technology to improve, and to use science now to explain the reason why adding aloe vera, for example, to the water helps with inflammation and helps to improve feed efficiency.
Well, thank you. We have one last question to each one of you. If you had a blank check and no restrictions to fund a sustainability initiative at your operation with your customers, what would it be?
Gosh, that's a doozy. I mean, gosh, if I had a blank check. So I'll have to simplify it, because I think it would be the blank check, like I talked about, creating the team. So I think making sure we had a team within our company that had the expertise in animal welfare, in agriculture, in soil health, in farming, right? So then we could build that team with the farm. And then if we actually had the time and resources with each farm to sit down with them and meet them where they're at and understand what is your cost of production and truly get at it and understand your cost of production, what do you need? And if I could sit down with every farmer and just understand, like, here's your cost of production, here's what I can pay you, so that I know that you're gonna make money. Because I want you to make money, we need to make money. And if you could figure out what that looks like and then have the experts to help them and bring them together to the table to figure out in that cost of production, what efficiencies can we unlock on your farm, in your system, that will help you be more profitable, more productive, and benefit us in these ways. So if we had the resources to have that team together on every farm, my gosh, the good we could do.
I love blank checks.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with your answer, but I would go more specifically to the greenhouse gas emissions. You know, we have been able to manage water emissions. You can see water. You know where it runs. You know where it goes. The gaseous emissions are a whole different animal, and I would get a baseline of our greenhouse gas emissions, and then I would want to know what all of the technologies that we've talked about, what is their contribution to reducing your methane or your nitrous oxide or your greenhouse gas emissions. And then I would want a computer program that you could look at different options and see how this affects your carbon intensity, your life cycle assessment of the beef that you're producing. That we're a long ways from there, but that's what I think would really move us forward, so that we were operating from a standpoint of knowledge and not just what we think or what we hope.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, you know, if I had a blank check, I'd probably develop an artificial intelligence system, you know, kind of like Skynet. It would free us all from doing the data analysis, you know, all the tedious tasks, and actually take us out of the office and back into the barns and the farms, so we can observe the animals and listen to what they're actually saying to us in terms of their comfort, and whether or not the diets that we formulated for them is the correct one, and the water that they're getting is safe enough to drink. So if I had a blank check, that's what I would do, you know, embrace the use of artificial intelligence to its fullest.
Very interesting. Well, let's we're gonna wrap up the panel. So let's thank Jen, Tom, and Tanika one more time.
Thank you for having us here. It's really an honor to be here, and thank you all for being very attentive.
So with that, we're going to wrap up our program this morning. We thank you, the virtual audience. Thanks for joining us. We really enjoyed having you all here for the last couple of days. We hope I learned a lot in the last couple of days. I hope you did too. So it's been a pleasure having all of you here. And that concludes the program with our virtual audience. For the ones